For 3 years of marriage, I lived behind a transparent, cold glass wall erected by Caroline Grayson, my wife. I was the legal husband on the marriage certificate, the nominal head of the household, the man who provided her with stable wealth, decent status, and unreserved tolerance, while half of her nights, half of her holidays, and half of her heart permanently belonged to Jared Grayson, her late sister's husband, the man she claimed she only took care of out of family loyalty. I am Alara Voss, and this is the story of how I spent 3 years swallowing humiliation and delusion, suffered the most extreme marital bias and betrayal, and finally rose from the abyss of heartbreak to launch a thorough, ruthless counterattack, burning up every fake loyalty and false affection that had strangled me for far too long. Caroline had weaved the most perfect and moving lie from the very beginning of our marriage. She told me with her softest, most sincere tone that her elder sister's sudden passing had left Jared utterly alone in the world, with no relatives to rely on, no one to take care of his daily life and emotions. As his sister-in-law and the only remaining female family member of the Grayson clan, she insisted that she bore an unshirkable responsibility to accompany and look after him. She called it the deep-rooted loyalty and family bond of the Grayson family, a tradition she would never abandon. I was young, soft-hearted, and foolishly devoted in those days. I believed every word she said without a single doubt. I respected her kindness, tolerated her sense of responsibility, and even felt guilty for occasionally feeling jealous, thinking I was being petty and selfish for resenting her dedication to her family. For 3 long years, I compromised endlessly. I endured empty festival dinners alone in our luxurious villa while she spent every Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's Eve at Jared's Rivercross apartment. I tolerated the fact that her holiday gifts, festival blessings, and warm companionship were always split into 2 parts, with the vast majority falling on Jared, leaving me with nothing but cold air and perfunctory afterthoughts. I silently endured the endless whispers and mocking stares from upper-class social circles. People whispered behind my back that I was a weak, indulgent husband, a fool who shared his wife with another man, a coward who could not even hold onto his own marriage and his own wife's heart. I bore all the gossip, all the grievance, all the lonely nights without a word of complaint, just to safeguard Caroline's so-called dignity and sense of responsibility. I thought my tolerance would eventually warm her heart, that my unreserved dedication would let her see who truly loved and cherished her, that one day she would put aside her so-called family loyalty and return wholeheartedly to our marriage. But Caroline never did. Her tone when talking to me was always gentle yet distant, soft on the surface, but cold and alienated in essence, exactly like standing behind a thick glass wall. She could smile and speak tenderly to me, but she never let me truly touch her heart. She knew all my preferences, yet she never took the initiative to cater to me. She knew I was lonely, yet she never stayed with me on purpose. She knew the outside world ridiculed me, yet she never cared to defend me for even a single sentence. I kept comforting myself that it was just her sense of responsibility, just her soft heart that could not bear to leave Jared alone. I kept lying to myself that there was nothing ambiguous between them, just pure family loyalty. I clung to this ridiculous illusion for 3 full years, until the catastrophic multi-car pileup accident that completely shattered all my delusions and stripped off all her fake disguises. It was a rainy Friday evening, the road slippery and foggy, visibility extremely low. A drunk driver crashed into the traffic queue on the highway, triggering a chain collision involving nearly 10 vehicles. Our 3 cars, my private car, Caroline's luxury sedan, and Jared's SUV, which had followed us all the way, were all crushed into twisted scrap metal in the violent impact. The sound of metal twisting, glass shattering, and tires screeching pierced the rainy night, sharp and terrifying. I had just removed the surgical stitches on my right thigh 3 days prior. The wound was still fresh and fragile, not fully healed. The violent collision made my unhealed wound tear open instantly, and warm, thick blood soaked through my pants in an instant, dripping continuously onto the crushed car floor. Sharp, piercing pains swept through my whole body, cold sweat soaking through my entire shirt, my limbs trembling uncontrollably, and my vision blurred with severe pain and shock. The car window beside me was completely shattered, glass shards scattered all over my body, leaving countless tiny wounds on my arms and cheeks. My leg was tightly stuck by the deformed car seat, and I could barely move an inch. The pain was so intense that I almost fainted, my throat dry and hoarse. I struggled to turn my head, looked at Caroline, who was sitting in the driver's seat and had barely suffered any injuries, and begged her with my last bit of strength. "Caroline, please help me. My leg is bleeding badly." I was her legal husband, the man who had loved and tolerated her for 3 years, the man who had never once failed her in life, career, or emotion. At this life or death moment, I thought she would definitely save me first. Even if she had always been distant, even if she had always favored Jared, I believed that our 3-year marital bond was enough for her to have the slightest priority for me in a crisis. But reality gave me the cruelest, most devastating slap in the face of my life. Caroline struggled to climb out of the deformed driver's seat, her movements steady and unhurried. Her gaze swept casually over my blood-stained, severely injured leg, over my pale, pain-stricken face, over my trembling body trapped in the wreckage. There was no panic, no distress, no heartache in her eyes, not even a trace of trivial sympathy. Without the slightest hesitation, without a single glance back, she turned abruptly and pulled open the rear car door with all her strength. Jared was sitting in the back seat, with only a trivial shallow scratch on his forehead, not even bleeding much, no other injuries at all. He was just slightly frightened, his expression flustered, but completely safe. Caroline threw herself forward instantly, holding Jared tightly in her arms with unprecedented tenderness and panic, her movements gentle and cautious, as if he was a fragile treasure that would break if she used a little more strength. "Don't look, it's okay, I'm here, I'm holding you. Nothing can hurt you." She patted his back over and over again, her voice soft and trembling with genuine distress, her eyes full of exclusive heartache and tenderness that I had never received in 3 years of marriage. She kept comforting his trivial fear, carefully checking his slight scratch, blowing on it gently, and whispering endless soothing words to calm his trivial panic. Behind her, my car door was severely twisted and deformed, tightly locked by the impact of the accident, completely unable to be opened from the inside. I was trapped alone in the cold, bloody wreckage, suffering from tearing wound pain, bleeding continuously, watching my wife hold another man tenderly, caring for his trivial scratch and unnecessary fear, completely abandoning my life and death. In that icy, desperate, rainy night, I finally woke up completely. She never had any sacred family responsibility, no deep-rooted Grayson family loyalty. All those excuses she had repeated for 3 years were nothing but elaborate, shameless lies. She did not take care of Jared out of duty. She simply could not bear to see him suffer even the slightest bit of hurt, could not tolerate him having even a trace of fear or grievance. The glass wall between us was never a distance of family responsibility. IT was a barrier of love. She loved Jared deeply, wholeheartedly, exclusively, and selfishly, while I was just a nominal husband she used as a cover, a tool to maintain her perfect social image, a fool who could provide for her life while silently accepting her betrayal and bias. The cold rain kept pouring down, hitting the shattered car windows and dripping on my blood-stained skin, icy cold, piercing straight into my bones. The pain in my leg was no longer the most painful thing. The real pain was the complete collapse of 3 years of devotion and illusion, the thorough despair of being completely abandoned by the person I loved the most at the moment of life and death. I watched Caroline hold Jared tightly, help him tidy up his messy clothes carefully, wipe the trivial bloodstain on his forehead gently, and ask over and over again if he felt uncomfortable anywhere, her tone flustered and distressed, completely ignoring me who was trapped in the wreckage, bleeding heavily, and on the verge of shock. Jared leaned in her arms lazily, his eyes sweeping over my bloody figure in the car, with a faint, arrogant, triumphant mockery in his gaze. He knew everything. He knew Caroline's true feelings for him, knew she had been using me as a shield for 3 years, knew I was the most ridiculous fool in this farce of marriage and betrayal. But he never stopped Caroline's deception, never clarified the so-called family loyalty, and even indulged and enjoyed Caroline's exclusive preference and betrayal all the time. This was the truth I had been blinded to for 3 years. The ambulance and police car sirens came from far and near, breaking the desperate silence of the rainy night. The rescuers rushed over quickly, first noticing me trapped in a deformed car with severe bleeding, and immediately started rescue work. It was not until 10 minutes later, after I was successfully rescued and sent to the ambulance, that Caroline finally turned her eyes to me, her expression calm and indifferent, without a single trace of guilt or apology. She just glanced at my bandaged leg lightly, then turned to ask the doctor anxiously about Jared's trivial scratch, her whole heart and all her attention still firmly tied to that man. Lying on the ambulance's cold stretcher, feeling the hemostatic gauze tightly wrapped around my thigh, enduring the dull and severe pain of wound tearing, I completely calmed down from the extreme pain and despair. All the love, tolerance, softness, and compromise I had for Caroline for 3 years were completely extinguished in this rainy night's life or death abandonment. Where there was endless tolerance and devotion before, there was only icy hatred and ruthless indifference left. Where there was foolish delusion and reluctant compromise before, there was only thorough sobriety and decisive counterattack determination left. I once cherished this marriage wholeheartedly, so I endured all the bias and betrayal. Now that I have seen through all the lies and hypocrisy, I will never let these two people who deceived me, trampled on my sincerity, and wasted my 3 years of youth get away with it easily. Caroline likes to play the role of a kind, responsible, loyal family woman in front of others, maintaining her perfect and noble social image. Jared likes to rely on Caroline's preference to pretend to be weak and innocent, enjoying the protection and dedication she gives without paying any price. Then I will personally strip off their perfect disguises, expose their dirty, shameless, deceptive true faces to the entire upper-class circle, let everyone see their long-term adultery and deception, let them lose all reputation, status, and social respect, and pay 10 times and 100 times the price for the 3 years of grievance and pain I have endured. After being sent to the hospital, my wound was resutured and bandaged by the doctor. The doctor repeatedly warned me that the wound was severely torn, the recovery cycle would be longer, and I must avoid emotional agitation and physical fatigue, otherwise it would leave permanent sequelae. I nodded indifferently, my heart already numb to all pain. Caroline only came to the ward once after I was hospitalized. She did not take the initiative to ask about my injury recovery, nor did she apologize for abandoning me in the accident. She just put a fruit basket on the bedside casually, her tone gentle but perfunctory, still maintaining her consistent alienated disguise. "You're fine, I'm relieved. Jared was scared badly last night. I have to go back to take care of him. You take good rest here. I'll come to see you when I have time." After saying this perfunctory sentence, she turned and left in a hurry, without a single pause, without a single glance back at my injured leg and haggard face. Watching her hurried back, I curled my lips into a cold, sarcastic smile. 3 years of marriage, 3 years of tolerance, 3 years of self-moved dedication, in her eyes, are not worth a single bit of Jared's trivial fear. Her so-called loyalty and responsibility are just the most shameless excuses for her selfish preference and cheating. From this day on, I stopped taking the initiative to contact Caroline, stopped asking about her whereabouts, stopped caring about her holidays and arrangements, and completely cut off all active emotional connections with her. I used all my spare time to sort out all the clues of her 3-year deception and collect irrefutable evidence of her long-term betrayal. I used to be too soft-hearted to investigate her private life, too reluctant to doubt her sincerity, and always chose to believe her excuses. But now, I have no more softness and reluctance left. I hired the most professional private investigation team, comprehensively sorted out her night accommodation records, travel trajectories, consumption records, chat records, and call records for 3 years. The investigation results are far more shameless and disgusting than I imagined. In 3 years of marriage, the number of nights she stayed at Jared's Rivercross apartment reached 487, almost half of all marriage nights. Every time she stayed there, she would delete all accommodation records and chat records carefully, leaving no trace for me to find. Every holiday, anniversary, and even my birthday, she would find various excuses to stay with Jared, leaving me alone at home. She spent a huge amount of my marital property on Jared, buying him luxury cars, designer watches, high-end custom clothes, and even paying for his real estate loan and daily consumption. All the money she spent on Jared was my hard-earned income, the property I accumulated through years of hard work, but she never felt the slightest guilt and even took it for granted, thinking it was the price I should pay for her so-called family loyalty. What's more shameless is that they have long crossed the bottom line of family ethics. The investigation videos and photos clearly recorded their intimate hugs, kisses, and even overnight cohabitation scenes. All the so-called sister-in-law and brother-in-law family bonds are just their moral fig leaf for long-term adultery. Caroline had been lying to me from start to finish. She married me not because she loved me, but because I had a stable career, superior financial conditions, and a gentle and tolerant personality. I was the most perfect tool for her to cover up her immoral relationship with Jared, the best cash machine and shield for her to maintain her perfect reputation. For 3 years, I was the only fool who was kept in the dark, who endured all the gossip and grievance alone, who dedicated all my sincerity and property to a fake marriage and a pair of immoral betrayers. While I was quietly collecting evidence and laying out a full-scale counterattack, Caroline and Jared became more unscrupulous because of my recent indifference. They mistakenly thought that I was still the weak, tolerant, and foolish husband who would never doubt her, never investigate her, and never take the initiative to resist. After I was discharged from the hospital, Caroline still stayed at Jared's apartment most of the time. She no longer even bothered to make up excuses. When I asked her where she had been, she just replied casually and perfunctorily, saying that Jared was not feeling well and needed her company, completely ignoring my feelings and the fact that I was still recovering from a serious injury. Jared even began to provoke me deliberately. He would take the initiative to send me photos of him and Caroline dining together, traveling together, and staying together, with provocative and arrogant words in the text message. Ilara, Caroline has never really loved you. The person she loves the most is me. You're just a tool for us. It's better for you to take the initiative to divorce and free yourself. Caroline knew all about Jared's provocation, but she never stopped him. Instead, she secretly indulged his arrogance and even acquiesced in his behavior, wanting to force me to take the initiative to propose divorce so that she could get a good reputation and divide my marital property smoothly and openly be with Jared. They thought I was still the incompetent, tolerant fool who would be angry and helpless, who could only swallow the grievance silently and leave in defeat. But they had no idea that all their arrogance, indulgence, and deliberate provocation were being completely recorded by my investigation team, becoming the most powerful ironclad evidence for my subsequent public sanction and lawsuit. The more arrogant they are now, the more miserable their ending will be. I remained extremely calm in the face of all their provocations and betrayal. I did not quarrel with them, did not expose them in advance, and did not show any anger and collapse. I just quietly waited for the best counterattack opportunity, preparing to give them a fatal blow at the most critical moment, letting them fall from the highest point of reputation to the bottom of the abyss in an instant. The best opportunity came half a month later, the annual Grayson Family Foundation Charity Gala, the most grand and high-profile social event of the Grayson family every year. All upper-class celebrities, business elites, and media reporters in the city will attend the gala. It is the most important occasion for the Grayson family to maintain their reputation and social status, and it is also the stage where Caroline has always loved to show her perfect, loyal, and kind image. Caroline had been preparing for this gala for a long time. She spent a lot of money on high-end custom gowns, luxury jewelry, and professional styling, intending to appear perfectly at the gala, continue to shape her image of a responsible, kind, and dedicated family member, and use the gala's public influence to completely consolidate her social reputation. She even told many social friends in advance that she would deliver a keynote speech at the gala, taking the opportunity to publicize her so-called family loyalty and sense of responsibility, to whitewash her long-term abnormal relationship with Jared, and to win more social praise and reputation. She was full of confidence and ambition, never knowing that this grand gala would become the public execution stage for her 3 years of deception and betrayal, the place where her perfect reputation and noble image were completely shattered. On the night of the charity gala, the venue was resplendent and magnificent, with bright lights and endless celebrities. All the guests were dressed in luxurious formal dresses, talking and laughing gracefully, and the atmosphere was grand and harmonious. Caroline appeared at the venue wearing a white high-end custom gown, elegant and gentle, with a perfect and dignified smile on her face. She took Jared's arm generously in front of everyone and faced the surrounding guest discussions. She still maintained her consistent whitewashing statement, saying that she was just taking care of her lonely brother-in-law out of family loyalty. All the guests who did not know the truth praised her repeatedly, saying that she was the most kind, responsible, and loyal woman in the upper class, a model of family virtue. Faced with countless praises and compliments, Caroline's smile became more proud and arrogant, and her eyes were full of satisfaction and ambition. Jared stood beside her, enjoying the praise from the guests implicitly, his eyes sweeping over me who walked into the venue alone, with obvious disdain and mockery in his gaze. In his eyes, I was just a useless loser who could only watch them show off their intimacy publicly and endure the shame alone. I ignored their arrogant gazes and the subtle discussions of the surrounding guests. I was dressed in a neat and formal black suit with a calm and cold expression, steady steps, and no superfluous emotions on my face. I quietly found a seat in the audience, waiting for the start of Caroline's keynote speech, waiting for the moment of final public counterattack. After the opening ceremony of the gala, the host took the stage and warmly invited Caroline to deliver her keynote speech on family loyalty and family responsibility. Caroline walked onto the bright stage gracefully, took the microphone, and began her perfect whitewashing performance. Her tone was gentle and sincere, her expression affectionate and touching, and she narrated her so-called 3 years of persistent dedication and silent companionship for the Grayson family, emphasizing her unshakable family loyalty and sense of responsibility. Family loyalty is the most precious tradition of the Grayson family, and no matter how much grievance and tiredness I endure, I will always insist on accompanying my lonely family members. Even if the outside world misunderstands me, even if I sacrifice my personal time and emotions, I will never give up my family responsibility. Her speech was extremely touching, and many guests present were moved by her so-called dedication and loyalty and burst into warm applause. The media reporters off the stage kept taking photos, intending to report her positive and perfect image in an all-round way after the gala. Just when her speech was coming to an end and the applause was the warmest, I stood up slowly from the audience, walked steadily onto the stage under the confused and shocked gazes of all the guests and reporters, and took the microphone from Caroline's hand directly and forcefully. My movements were calm and powerful, without any fluster or anger, but the cold aura all over my body instantly suppressed the warm and touching atmosphere of the whole venue. The noisy applause stopped abruptly, and the entire grand gala venue fell into dead silence in an instant. All eyes were firmly locked on me, waiting for my next move. Caroline's smile froze on her face instantly. She looked at me in shock and panic, her eyes full of unease and confusion, completely unable to understand why I would suddenly take the stage and disrupt her perfect speech. I glanced at her pale and flustered face coldly, then faced all the guests, cameras, and reporters present, and opened my mouth slowly, my voice clear, powerful, and penetrating, spreading to every corner of the venue. Everyone here just praised Mrs. Caroline Grayson for her loyalty, dedication, and sense of family responsibility. Today, I will take this opportunity to let everyone know the real truth behind her so-called family loyalty and dedication. Under the panicked and shocked gaze of Caroline and Jared, I directly controlled the stage large screen and played all the ironclad evidence I had collected for 3 years without any reservation. First played the 3-year accommodation trajectory records for 187 nights of overnight records at Jared's apartment, detailed to every date and every time period, clear and irrefutable. Then played the high-definition photos and surveillance videos of their intimate hugs, kisses, and overnight cohabitation, every frame clearly recording their immoral and shameless intimate behavior. Subsequently, I played the huge marital property consumption records, all the luxury gifts, real estate expenses, and daily consumption that Caroline spent my hard-earned money on Jared in 3 years, with detailed amount records and time records, fully proving that she used my property to support her betrayal and derailment. Finally, I played the provocative text messages that Jared took the initiative to send me, as well as the audio records of Caroline acquiescing in his provocation and secretly mocking my stupidity and tolerance. The entire large screen continuously broadcasts all the dirty truths that have been hidden for 3 years. All the guests, celebrities, and reporters present were completely shocked, their eyes full of disbelief and astonishment. The warm and touching atmosphere of the gala completely collapsed, replaced by extreme shock and uproar. Oh my God! This is not family loyalty at all. This is long-term adultery and betrayal. She has been pretending to be kind and responsible for 3 years. She is simply a hypocrite and a liar. She used her husband's money to support another man and abandoned her husband at the scene of the accident. This is too ruthless and shameless. All the so-called family responsibility and loyalty are fake. She has been deceiving everyone all the time. The noisy exclamations and discussions swept the entire venue in an instant. All the previous praises and compliments turned into fierce accusations and disdain. The media reporters frantically took photos and recorded videos, completely capturing Caroline and Jared's desperate and embarrassed faces. Caroline's face turned pale and bloodless in an instant, her whole body trembling violently, her legs weak and almost unable to stand. Her perfect, elegant, kind, and loyal image that she had painstakingly maintained for 3 years was completely shattered in front of all upper-class celebrities and media reporters at this moment. All her reputation, status, and social praise vanished in an instant. Jared was also completely panicked. He lost his previous arrogance and calmness, his face full of embarrassment and fear, and he wanted to turn around and escape from the stage, but was fixed in place by the countless mocking and condemning gazes around him. I stared coldly at the two people who had deceived me and betrayed me for 3 years, and continued to speak in a calm and ruthless tone, announcing all their sins openly. For 3 years of marriage, I tolerated her endless nights away, endured her extreme bias and cold violence, endured the outside world's ridicule and gossip, and always maintained the most sincere tolerance and respect for her. But she took my sincerity as weakness, my tolerance as foolishness, my dedication as a tool for her betrayal. In a life-or-death car accident, I was trapped in the wreckage, bleeding heavily and begging for help. But she abandoned her legal husband without hesitation and held a man who only had a trivial scratch in her arms, carefully comforting his unnecessary fear. This is her so-called family loyalty. This is her so-called sense of responsibility. She wasted my 3 years of youth, deceived my sincere feelings, embezzled my marital property, and trampled on my dignity and bottom line wantonly. For 3 years, I was the biggest fool in this fake marriage farce. But from today on, I will no longer tolerate or compromise. I raise my head sharply, my tone firm and powerful, announcing my final counterattack decision to the whole audience. I formally file for divorce with Caroline Grayson on the spot. I will sue her for long-term marital betrayal, illegal embezzlement of marital property, and spiritual damage compensation. I will let her and Jared bear all legal responsibilities and economic losses. From today on, I will completely cut off all ties with these two immoral and shameless people and let them pay the price for 3 years of deception and betrayal for the rest of their lives. After my announcement, the entire venue erupted into thunderous applause and unanimous approval. All the guests present completely stood on my side, condemning Caroline and Jared's shameless behavior and praising my decisive and ruthless counterattack. Faced with endless condemnation, ridicule, and media capture, Caroline completely collapsed on the stage, tears streaming down her face, trying to explain and defend herself in a panic, but all her words became feeble and ridiculous in front of the overwhelming ironclad evidence. It's not like this. I was just confused. I didn't mean to deceive you. Alara, forgive me. Give me a chance. She rushed towards me in embarrassment, trying to grab my clothes and beg for forgiveness, with a humble and desperate posture that had never appeared in her 3 years of marriage. But I just stepped back coldly, avoiding her touch completely, my eyes full of thorough indifference and disgust. Chance, when I was trapped in the wreckage, bleeding heavily and waiting for your help, you didn't give me a chance. When I endured 3 years of loneliness and grievance, you didn't give me a chance. You don't deserve any forgiveness from me. My cold and ruthless words completely shattered Caroline's last glimmer of hope. She slumped on the ground weakly, crying hysterically, completely losing her former elegant and perfect appearance. Jared wanted to sneak away while the chaos, but was stopped by the security guards arranged by me in advance. All his scandalous behaviors were completely exposed to the public, and his personal reputation and social credibility were completely ruined. That night, all the upper-class social circles, news media, and public opinion platforms completely exploded. The scandal of Caroline and Jared's 3-year fake loyalty and real adultery spread throughout the whole city in an instant, becoming the most shocking and talked about social event. Caroline's perfect reputation collapsed completely. She was spurned and condemned by the entire upper class. All social connections and celebrity resources were completely cut off, and she became a hypocritical liar that everyone shouted at. The Grayson Family Foundation's reputation was severely damaged. The family's social status plummeted, and countless cooperative enterprises terminated their cooperation one after another, causing huge economic losses to the Grayson family. Jared also completely lost his foothold in the upper class. He was dismissed from his job due to moral corruption. All his social relationships were broken off, and he became a notorious immoral person with no one to trust. Subsequently, the divorce lawsuit and property lawsuit I filed quickly went through judicial procedures. With complete ironclad evidence, the court ruled for a speedy divorce, determined Caroline as the sole responsible party for marital betrayal, completely deprived her of all marital property distribution rights, and ordered her to fully compensate me for all embezzled property and huge spiritual damage compensation. Caroline went from a glamorous upper-class celebrity with a perfect reputation to a ruined, penniless sinner overnight. Jared also fell from a decent elite to a notorious loser with nothing. They finally paid a painful and thorough price for their 3 years of deception, betrayal, and extreme bias. A month later, all the farce completely ended. I completely recovered from my leg injury, bid farewell to the cold and fake marriage that had trapped me for 3 years, and regained my free and independent life. I refocused on my career. My life returned to calm and smooth, and I no longer have to endure endless loneliness, grievance, and betrayal. On a quiet evening, I stood on the balcony of my new apartment, looking at the bright neon lights of the city, and felt unprecedented ease and peace in my heart. I once foolishly clung to a fake marriage and a hypocritical person, endured extreme bias and cold violence, and wasted 3 precious years of my life. But the desperate abandonment in the accident awakened me completely. It let me know that feelings that rely on tolerance and compromise can never be retained, and sincerity that is trampled on will only end in despair. I used to grieve for the betrayal of love, but now I am grateful for the thorough awakening in despair. I burned up all the fake loyalty and false affection that had strangled me, completely broke free from the emotional abyss, and regained my dignity, freedom, and self-worth. Those who trample on sincerity will eventually be destroyed by hypocrisy. Those who cling to false affection will eventually fall into the abyss. Caroline and Jared's miserable ending is the most just punishment for their selfishness, hypocrisy, and betrayal. From now on, I will no longer give my sincerity to unworthy people, no longer tolerate endless betrayal and bias, and will only treat myself gently, cherish my own life, and walk towards a brighter and more free future. The glass wall marriage that trapped me for 3 years is completely burned to ashes. The future is wide open, and I am reborn from despair.